Whoop-de-doop, here it comes. Hi everyone, it's me again, Kirsty. Thanks so much for tuning in. Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to set up my bullet journal for July. I'm very grateful for all of your patience because this one took me a bit longer to get out. But we're here now, so thanks for tuning in, as I said. For July, I didn't quite know what I should do as a theme for quite a while. And in the end, I decided to do a magical or dreamy jars theme. So the idea was to draw little jars and then put stuff in there that doesn't usually go into jars. Now that is not the case for the cover page because I had already drawn out these nice flowers that are somewhat magnolia-ish, and I just like the look of flowers on my cover page, so I decided to leave it as is. But for all of the other jars that I drew for this theme, you're going to see that most of them are filled with things that usually can't be put into jars, like a whale or something. You're going to see that in a minute. But as I said, for this one, I decided to go with these flowers. I doodled them a while ago somewhere on a spare piece of paper, and I loved the look of that. And I felt like it would be a cool idea to make a theme out of that somehow. And then I had the idea of those dreamy jars, as I said. I also made them a little more dreamy by just adding lots of little sparkles and those little seeds of dandelions. Tiny little fireflies that look like tiny hearts, and just anything that came to my mind that is very dreamy per se. And the main thing that made everything look very magical was to add those little golden circles all around whatever jar I was drawing. You're going to see that in a second. So for the flowers themselves, I just added lots of shadows and lots of hatching so that they look a bit more three-dimensional. Everything that would be green is much darker than the petals of the flowers are. And for all of my titles in this setup, I drew a little box with a tiny drop shadow, and I used my alphabet stamps to stamp out July in German. Hence, there is an I instead of a Y. The thing that made everything look very magical and dreamy, in my opinion, were these little golden circles. If you look against the sun with a camera, then usually you have those little circles in the air. I don't know what you actually call them, but it's just circles or bubbles of light. And I felt I had that idea in mind when I started drawing those circles around all of the jars that I drew for this setup. And I really think it looks magical this way. All right. My next spread is my calendar spread, as per usual. I added my little box on the top with the July title again, and then it was time to draw out my big calendar that I always use. July is a little tricky if you start your weeks off on Mondays and not on Sundays, because there is one additional row that you need for just one day, if that makes sense. So the month starts with a Saturday and ends on a Monday. So I need a completely different line for Monday. There are people that just add it to the top or the bottom row, but that just doesn't feel right to me. I don't know. So it's just always a bit tricky to find out what layout you're going to use to make all of the boxes that you need for a month fit. But after drawing out many different kinds of layouts, I ended up with this one where I had individual little boxes with spaces in between, and each box is 5x5 dot grid spaces, I guess. And after that, it was time for my little jar that I drew in the bottom right corner of the spread. I filled this one with clouds and a little meadow in the front. Everything that is in the jars I drew in black and white, and only with my go-to ballpoint pen that I tend to use for everything in my layouts anyway. And everything that goes around it, which is mainly just my golden circles, those little bubbles, that's the only pop of color that I used for all of my spreads, for this setup at least. Alright, so after I had drawn out those little jarry clouds and the little meadow, I went back with some of the fireflies again. I made sure they look like fireflies by watering down my golden watercolor a lot more than I did for my golden circles, and just added this tiny little bubble underneath that little bottom, so this way it will look like it's actually glowing without, you know, competing with the golden circles. I added those everywhere on the spread and behind some of my boxes for my calendar, and there's also these little dandelion seeds flying off in the distance everywhere. And I think it really looks like a nice afternoon somewhere in the sun, in the meadow, having a picnic. That's what this spread reminds me of, with the little clouds in this jar. If you could take jars with you from beautiful memories that you've had, oh my goodness, that would be the coolest thing. Anyhow, next up is my tracker spread. I also labeled this spread in German this time around. I was a little sick of just going back and forth between English and German so much in my journal that I decided to go back to the idea of making everything in German for once. So I had done that in the past. It's definitely a few years ago at this point, but I decided to go back to this for now at least, and that is why I labeled them a little differently. So for my habits tracker I called it Alltag, which is actually the translation for day-to-day life, and then sleep and mood is essentially the same words in German. And yeah, it's nice for me as a German speaker to have my journal in German for a change. I added those tiny little jars only next to the habits tracker title, to the left side and the right side. One of them is filled with little mountains and the right one is filled with a lake. My husband said that the one with the mountains actually looks a little like the desert. I take it, I don't mind. The point is that there's stuff in there that doesn't actually fit into a jar, which makes it dreamy. That's the whole idea. Anyhow, right, the habits trackers are just 8 little boxes in the shape of the calendar where I can add a little dot for every day that I did a certain habit. And as always, my sleep and mood tracker are trackers that I use vertically, and so yeah, it's not a little calendar but just a vertical layout where I can just add my mood and the amount that I slept each night as little graphs. Yeah. I didn't draw all that much on this spread. I still feel like it's a bit overloaded because I added so many circles and dreamy stuff like the little seeds and the fireflies and some sparkles here and there. I don't know why, probably because the habits tracker spread is already a bit filled with the many individual calendars, but oh, you know, I still think it works, and I'll see how it looks at the end of the month when everything is filled out. Maybe it does look a little less crowded by then. Maybe it looks more crowded, which I actually think is going to be the case. But anyway, my next spread is my notes page, which I also labeled in German. And I added this very big border to everything. I added my little title with my stamps. And then to the very left side and the very right side of the border, I added some tiny little fireflies, some golden circles, and then on the right side, I added another jar and also some circles and some fireflies. On the right side, as you're going to see, I added a little whale into my jar. That is what I already teased at the beginning of this video. I loved the idea of having a little whale in a glass jar, so that's why I thought it would be cool and cute. I did a whale theme a few years ago. It's not that long ago. I think it was in June 2021 or something. And drawing all those whales was just such a pleasure. I love the way whales look, and they're just so mighty and also very cute if you draw them with this little eye, the way I did here. He's just smiling and he's very content and happy. I just drew some waves here and there in between. And as I mentioned, just for every spread that I did, I just added a bunch of those golden circles because they made me feel like it looks very dreamy this way. And that's everything for my notes page. As I kept mentioning again and again on my channel, I use this as my brain dump page. So everything that comes to my mind during the month, at some point, I will just dump it onto this page. And it usually doesn't have any specific layout, which is why I keep it empty and just try to add some bits and bobs that make it fit together with the whole theme. Now, the last spread that I'm setting up in this video is my first weekly spread for July, as always, and I had lots of fun with this one because I also changed some things up. Apart from adding the German title and the week number for this week, I decided to skip drawing out the little mini calendar and just made sure that the date for each day of the week is on each day of the week box. And then on the left side, I just tried to split up my to-do list for the whole week into 3 different parts. So there's one thing I have to do for the whole week. There's one section for the things that I want to do pertaining to a specific habit of mine. And then at the very last section is for things that I need to remember for the upcoming week. And I really want to get back to using my journal for things that I really do need and to make my life easier. And splitting up my to-do list for the week into different parts is definitely a step into that direction. The little jar I filled with a tree, and I love how that one came out. It's actually one of my favorites of this whole theme. The fact that there are little birds inside gives the tree even more dimension and makes it look mightier and bigger and just ridiculous to be in a jar. So I guess that's why I feel like this is one of the most successful dreamy jars that I've drawn for this setup. And yeah, that is everything for my setup for July. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and please give it a like and subscribe if you did. Here's my final flip through of all the pages that I did for July. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please know that I appreciate you so much, and leave a magical, dreamy emoji down in the comments. And also let me know if there's any specific theme that you would like to see from me for August. And with that, I'm gonna get going and see you next time. Bye bye!